Well, g'day and welcome to the Macquarie Street Political Podcast. My name's Lyle Shelton. I'm with the Family First Political Party and it's great to have your company. It's Friday, August 22, 2025, year of our Lord 2025. Coming to you live this afternoon for those who perhaps finding a bit of a wind down for the working week to jump in and catch up with a bit of political commentary, or you might be watching the replay, which will be sitting on YouTube or our other social media platforms, Facebook and X. Well, I've got a packed show for you this afternoon. I've got Jasmine Sussex joining me shortly. She's was with the Australian Breastfeeding Association. She might tell us a little bit about why she is no longer with that association. It's quite controversial, but she was the organiser of the Women Will Speak rally last Saturday in Melbourne, which I was at, and we're going to talk about that. What really happened? You might have seen some media reporting. You'll find out the truth here on Macquarie Street. I've got Christopher Bro here, a friend of mine, barrister from Adelaide. He is helping organise a very important conference in October in Adelaide on this whole gender issue, on what's being done to children in terms of changing their bodies irreversibly. It's very controversial. This is going to be a significant conference, some world experts coming in for that. Deepa Matthew, also from South Australia, a bit of a South Australian flavour today. She'll be joining me. She's Family First lead upper house candidate at the upcoming election in March next year, and she's going to help unpack some of the big news in Adelaide this week. There was a parliamentary inquiry that said that pregnant men should be able to take part in stillbirth discussions. Yep, you heard that right. We'll talk about that. Also, South Australia is considering banning smacking, putting parents in jail who lightly discipline their children, as parents have for millennia. It's a great way to bring up well-adjusted young people, but could be banned in South Australia. So we'll hear about that. Also, there was some breaking news this afternoon out of Queensland. The LNP State Council was meeting in Brisbane, and they have voted to join minor parties like Family First in banning net zero. And we'll talk a bit about that. So lots coming up. But right now, I want to bring in Jasmine Sussex. But before I do, I want to give you a bit of a taste of what happened at her rally in Melbourne on Saturday. And I say, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah. I say, hey, what's going on? Well, Jasmine, I'm really delighted to have you on the show today. Tell our viewers what the heck is going on.
Great question, Lyle. Yeah, it was a really good song to have sung at the rally, and Christina Green was the woman singing there. She's a Melbourne musician and supporter of women's sex-based rights. So yeah, a lot of us have realised that something pretty bad is going on in our schools, in our workplaces, in women's health, as we've seen in South Australia this week. And we're really coming together, and we welcome your support, Lyle, in asking, politicians and government departments that are there to serve us, what is going on and why are they letting these strange ideas about gender identity infiltrate throughout all areas of society.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, it's got so crazy that someone like yourself goes to the trouble of organising the necessary permits to hold a public demonstration to allow women to come and speak about, as you say, their sex-based rights. What has brought us to this moment?
Well, we've noticed since 2013, which, as you know, Lyle, and probably many of your viewers do too, was when the Parliament introduced this idea of gender identity into the Sex Discrimination Act, and they decided that it was important to protect people who might have a gender identity that's different to their sex so that they'd receive the same non-discrimination protections as everybody else. So that was supposed to be about, you could apply for a job and not be discriminated against if you were otherwise suitable for that job just because you had a gender identity or any other type of, goods or service. But unfortunately, it's kind of really hijacked women's sex-based rights so that now men who might feel that they've got a female gender identity, which obviously they can believe that if they want to, but it's getting to the stage where we're kind of required to go along with pretending that we also believe that, and that should give those people access to all spaces, services, and special services for women that were designed to respond to our unique place in society. So women's health or domestic violence shelters, or even women's prisons. Now we've got in Victoria 2 men who identify as women that we're aware of who've been placed in Dame Phyllis Frost women's prison. So it's pretty bad, Lyle, and we just want to talk about it.
Yeah, I noticed there was a headline in the international press this week of a neo-Nazi in Europe somewhere being placed in a women's prison. I mean, this has just got ridiculous. Your rally, I won't call it a protest. It was a rally to elevate discussion on the rights of women and girls not to have biological males intruding in their spaces and in their sports. But it generated some controversy. I was flying down to Melbourne. You text me and warned me that that there could be some trouble. The media were reporting there's going to be violent clashes, all this sort of thing. I got there was a big police presence, and maybe Charlie, our producer, might just put up some of that imagery. You can see there, that's the trans activists, the counter protest about 200 metres away from us, waving their flags. I must admit that I hardly noticed them, but you wouldn't notice that from the news. And then we've got some other vision of some of the police security. You can see there, Jasmine, they're automatic weapons those police officers are carrying. And there's the riot squad with riot shields. Did we need all of that?
Well, unfortunately, we do, really. So since 2023, which was when Kelly J. Keane came to Melbourne, there's really been a very heightened level of threat against women who are talking about their sex-based rights, which obviously, the riot police aren't there for women. They're there for those who are, seeking to do women harm. So in the lead up to this rally, we had some chatter online that neo-Nazis were going to try and come and gate crash the event again to get attention. And luckily they didn't come, but we did still have the rabble of, people who claim to represent trans people coming with, black face masks and hiding their identity and calling for violence against women, So, yeah.
Yeah, look, and there they are. There's that footage again. They were quite away from us. I must admit, I felt very safe that day, and I think the women who came would have felt the same. The police did a terrific job, but I couldn't help but think at how much money this is costing the taxpayers simply because of the threat of those people across the way there. And they did instigate a scuffle with the police, and that did make the news, which of course meant that your message didn't make the news.
Yeah, this is the problem. People can read between the lines that we're obviously the ones needing protection, not the ones that the police are there to protect us against. But still, people aren't really hearing the deeper message that we're trying to get across. I mean, the main thing that these two events that I've organised with a group of women, were trying to talk about is these new anti-vilification laws that they're trying to bring in Victoria. And also they call them social cohesion laws. But obviously they're really going to divide us rather than bring us together. And unfortunately, they have this kind of victim Olympics, kind of hierarchy of human rights built into it, so that if you're, trans identifying, you're then the most oppressed. And if you're, just a boring woman, then, you should really just sit down and shut up and make way for, the truly oppressed individuals.
Well, Jasmine, I heard you talk about that at the rally on Saturday, and it got my attention because, as many of my viewers will know, and I know you know because we've spoken, we're both victims of legal action. I want to come to your legal case in a minute too, but I'm being sued by 2 drag queens in Brisbane, and partly because I, said that one of the drag queens, it's a biological man presenting as a woman, and presenting that to children, I said was a dangerous role model. And I had a trial back in 2022. The person presiding over the trial, Member Gordon of the Queensland Civil and Administrative Tribunal, said that I was not guilty, and I was completely vindicated in that trial because a reasonable person wouldn't expect to be vilified, and so I was vindicated. But you mentioned that changes to the Victorian law, which is very similar, that we've got almost identical state-based anti-discrimination vilification laws. It pretty much works the same way. Tell me what these changes are and how that might mean that someone like me may not be vindicated again if the case was rerun.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the reasonable person test has really been flipped on its head, not just in vilification laws, but in defamation laws and lots of other laws. The reasonable person is kind of an average person, whereas in the Victorian legislation, it's a reasonable person from the affected group.
Yep.
So in your case, that would mean a reasonable drag queen or a reasonable drag king.
Yep.
Not sure there is such a thing, but don't sue me. So it's a real worry. And the other thing that they're doing in Victoria is they're lowering the threshold from a more objective definition of harm to more of an offence-caused threshold.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that thresholds are already very low. I've been through 6 years of litigation based on, perceived hurt feelings and the like. As I say, I was vindicated in my first trial. They've appealed. I've been through a 3-day appeal hearing in March. I'm still waiting for the judgment on the appeal. But Jasmine, that's my legal woes. And what you were talking about on Saturday directly affects people like me. But you're also profoundly personally affected because you were with the Australian Breastfeeding Association. For those who don't know, tell us what happened to you and your role with that wonderful association that helps mothers as they're coping with their newborn babies.
Yeah. So back in 2021, the ABA struggled with this issue of how to help women really who might not identify as women. And it had a consultation about gender inclusive language and asked its counsellors if, if we should be using language like breastfeeding families and chest feeding and all of this sort of, new speak. And the decision out of that consultation was that no, we wouldn't. We'd only use that language in one-to-one counselling. So if you got a call on the National Helpline, which is federally funded, that if someone referred to themselves as chest feeding, then you'd probably mirror that language back to them, But unfortunately, what happened was there was a lot of ill feeling within the association and a lot of complaints were lodged. And 7 women that I'm aware of were investigated for, it was packaged up as breaching the code of conduct, but really it was pushing back against this kind of gender woo in women's health. And so myself and a number of other breastfeeding counsellors were sacked or let go from the association. And
what did you and those other women actually say that caused you to be sacked? I mean, it's a pretty extreme course of action to take.
yeah, well, it really wasn't, on reflection, it wasn't really what we said, which was very kind of ABA and mumsy and lovely. We said things like, only mothers breastfeed, which is why we need maternity leave to birth and then recover and breastfeed the baby. Like, that was one of the things that I said. But because I said that in the context of this kind of almost civil war that was going on within the association between counsellors who imagine, their teenage children might have a gender identity, or their, young adult children might have a gender identity, and, women like me or counsellors like me who could see that there was a whole world of harm coming to women and breastfeeding if we adopted this language, then that was really how it all got into that. But then the legal issue was actually happened as I was being sacked. And that caught the attention, not just my treatment, but others of the national media and some trans activists. And one of them, who's from Queensland, started to, I guess, follow me and keep track of me, and then made a series of complaints. So to the Breastfeeding Association, the E-Safety Commissioner, and then the Queensland Human Rights Commission. And that complaint with the Queensland Human Rights Commission is still going. So now we're at, same as you know, Lyle, the Civil Administrative Tribunal up in Queensland.
Yeah. This is how it works for people who aren't aware of this. So you've simply pointed out, along with others in your association, that men can't breastfeed. I don't think I've got to know you a little bit. You're not someone who's harsh. I think we're all sensitive to people who might be struggling with their gender identity. That's a real thing. We might have opinions about how you deal with that, but these activists jump on this. They go to the Queensland Human Rights Commission, or the equivalent in the States. This regulatory regime is right across the board in Australia. You're compelled to go to compulsory mediation. That's the process I went through. If you can't mediate, which basically means give in to the activists, they take you to the tribunal. And that's where I've been for the last 6 years. And you're embarked on this journey. And in full disclosure, you and I share the same law firm, the Human Rights Law Alliance, who do a magnificent job helping people like us. But it's just crazy that we've got to a situation like this where people like us, because of the way the law is constructed, are subject to what I call vexatious litigation.
Yeah, it certainly feels vexatious when you're the recipient of these complaints. Yeah, and thank goodness for the Human Rights Law Alliance, because where would we be without them? And I think a credit to them as well, that they really are interested in everyone's human rights. So whether it's a former CEO of the Australian Christian Lobby like yourself, or ex-Labor Party member, I'm currently lapsed on again, off again, and like, I'd describe myself as a feminist and a breastfeeding counsellor, and I'm not much of a Christian, but that's certainly not a problem.
Some people might say I'm not much of a Christian, and I'd probably say that sometimes as well, Jasmine. Jasmine, in all seriousness, I mean, we wouldn't have met had it not been because of this issue. And as you say, we're from different sides of the political spectrum. And just going back to your rally on Saturday, again, we found ourselves there. I know there were, Christian Family First type people there. A number of the speakers were lesbians. You had the Lesbian Action Group. But I didn't hear anything there that I disagreed with. And, I think it's great that we can make common cause. We don't have to agree with each other on everything. And just while you answer that, I'll get Charlie, if he can, just put up that footage of the police with the automatic weapons again. It's such a shocking, confronting thing. But, there's strange bedfellows in this, isn't there, Jasmine?
Yeah, there is. And I agree that it's really important that we focus on the things we can agree on, because this is a 99% versus 1% issue.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether you're a Christian or a feminist or a, you know, lesbian separatist feminist, we all know how important sex is, our biological sex, to how we lead our lives, you know. And it's okay that there's a small group of people who don't share that conviction, but the problem is when they start to try and make us lead our lives according to their belief, and, you know, punishing us for not sharing those beliefs with them.
Well, good on you, Jasmine, for stepping up and for organising the rally last week and for keeping this issue in the public eye, even though it was hijacked by some activists and the media reported a lot of false things about it. That's why we have podcasts like today, and I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Lyle.
That was Jasmine Sussex, the organiser of the Women Will Speak rally. Now, coming up next week, we've going to continue with a bit of a gender theme on this week's show. I've got a good friend of mine, Christopher Brohere, joining me now from Adelaide. Christopher's a barrister in South Australia, and he's also been a Family First Senate candidate at the last election. And we've known each other for a long time, worked at the Australian Christian Lobby together. Christopher, welcome. Great to have you. You're organising a very important conference in October in Adelaide. Tell us about it.
Thanks, Lyle. I'm just a bit player. I'm not the organiser. I'm just helping out.
I don't know about that, Christopher, but you're way too modest.
So the Coalition of Advancing Scientific Care is a group of professionals and parents and others who are interested in this space. And we've been working in this area now for 3 or 4 years. We are putting on in October the first public conference on the issue of gender dysphoria to highlight the importance of holistic care for sex-confused kids. So we have the privilege of having 2 lead international speakers. Firstly, Professor Rita Caltiala. She's the professor of psychiatry at the youth psychiatry, I think, at the one of the leading universities in Helsinki, Finland. And it was she and her colleagues who started the pushback against the affirmation model some years ago.
Now, just on that, Christopher, and I know you'll tell us about the other speakers, but she was written up in the Weekend Australian newspaper just a week or so ago. They no longer put children on this train of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormone surgery in Finland, do they?
No. So they... as Professor Caltiala explained in that article in the Oz, because Finland is a nationalized medical service, everything's done through the government. And there was a push in the around 2010, I think, for there to be a gender service, a political push. And so they did the investigation, they contacted the Dutch clinicians, and they set up this model. And what they expected to see from the Dutch evidence was a small number, mainly young males who had really from early childhood identified as the opposite sex and who had no other psychiatric problems. What they saw was a significant number of early or prepubescent girls with significant psychiatric problems presenting with gender dysphoria. And so Professor Caltiala and others had the courage to say, whoa, something's wrong here. So they went to the Finland government, and their national standards group is called COHERE. I'm not sure exactly of the meaning of the acronym, but it's COHERE, and in Finnish it might be something quite different. And they did an investigation, and they concluded that the affirmation model wasn't correct, so that you have to have holistic care to unpack the drivers for the dysphoria in the kids before you ever get to giving them life-changing puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. So as Professor Caltiala explained in that article, a small number may still go on to that medical treatment, but it's only after they've been through this extensive psychotherapy model.
Right, so it's a very different process to here in Australia, where kids seem to be on a freight train in this direction. And I
Correct.
want to come back to the other speakers. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but it just raises the question. Why are we in Australia not paying any attention to what's been happening in Finland? The UK has closed this down. Many states in America have. And I suppose this is why you're having the conference, obviously, because the Australian health authorities and governments and politicians are not taking any notice.
That's right. So we've been speaking and lobbying governments, state and federal, for a number of years. The ACL ran a seminar in the federal parliament, in the Tasmanian parliament some years ago. We ran CASC ran a secret conference here in Adelaide a couple of years ago, because the clinicians
Why was it secret, Christopher?
The clinicians
what's the problem
were
in an open and free society like Australia, a democracy? Why do medical professionals have to meet in secret?
Many people were concerned for pushback, and that's a fact. But the hinge of fate, if you like to use that phrase that Churchill used, has changed ever since the Cass Review in 2024. And so now we discerned that it's important to go public on this conference. This is the first time anyone's doing this. And so the Cass committee discerned that we needed to go public. And so we've had the privilege of being able to have Professor Kaltiala come, and Helen Joyce, who's written one of the leading texts on this issue from a popular viewpoint. The other is Abigail Schreier, Helen Joyce, and there's another very good, more clinical text written by Dr. Diana Kenny. And so Helen and Professor Kaltiala will headline a host of other supporting acts, if you like, psychiatrists, lawyers, pediatricians, etc., in Australia,
Christopher,
and
I see on the screen
also
there,
parents.
I've got parents, very important. Obviously, I see we've got the brochure on the screen. You've also got Dr. Gillian Spencer from Queensland, who was sacked from the gender or stood down from the gender service there as a child psychiatrist, and it still remains suspended, despite the fact that the LNP government has been in power for almost a year. They haven't righted this wrong. So she's one of your speakers as well.
Yes, so she's the after-dinner speaker. I call her the face that launched 1,000 articles. So she's going to be our after-dinner speaker at the dinner on Friday night, the 17th. And I see you've got the flyer there. It's, for anybody who's interested, it's casc.ltd. And if anyone's listening and interested, there are still tickets, and we would love to see you there. We need to really fill up this conference so that we can send a clear message. Something that struck me is that in South Australia, if you look at the stats over the last few years, as there's been more publicity about the problems of affirmation, the referrals to the gender clinic have started to drop off. And so rather than the part of the rationale of the conference is, rather than trying to get governments to do things, the civil society's got to step up and put the information out there. This is scientific fact information. It's not ideological. The rest of the world is going that way. We have to confront it, and we have to make our politicians confront it by civil society speaking up.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. That seems to be essentially what happened in Finland, as you described earlier. They realised that the evidence didn't show that it was helping kids, so the medical protocols changed. But it seems like here in Australia, it's been driven by ideology, not by the science.
I think that's right. And there was a very important decision. It was Reed Devon. That's a pseudonym, a decision of Justice Trump in the family court. And what Justice Trump said was that the so-called Australian standards are not Australian standards. They're not supported by any government authority. So the group called AUSPAT, Australian Professional Association of Transgender Health, has styled itself in that manner, but it's not a professional association exclusively. It's an It's a mixture of professionals and activists. And it published its own guidelines and called them the Australian standards, written by Professor Dr. Michelle Telfer and others. They are not accepted standards like the standards to build a house or something like that.
No, and these are standards which are being used to make life-altering decisions for children, such as putting them on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, which can cause lifelong infertility, and then also even in taking the drastic step of double mastectomies. We know that there's a number of minors who have been through that process in the last several years, and yet the standards, it would seem, are dodgy.
Exactly. So what the Cass review exposed was the standards self-refer, so they refer to each other to support each other. So they all seem to stem from SOC 7, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, which is an activist organization. It used to be called the Harry Benjamin Society. It changed its name. And then the Endocrine Society guidelines refers to SOC 7, and SOC 8, which is the current WPAT guidelines, refers to SOC 7, and OSPAT refers to those three. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like, and it's not science.
No, and it seems the good thing about this space, and I'm sure your conference is going to give this a further push along, but there's a lot of articles starting to come forward at the moment. The Australian newspaper is particularly doing a lot of reporting on this gender fluid issue. Today's article was with Gary Johns, the former head of the ACNC, the charities regulator. He, on behalf of a group of medical professionals, is calling for the charity status of OzPath to be revoked because it's not a public benevolent organisation for the reasons that you've said. Now, this is huge news when you've got someone of Gary Johns' stature calling for their charity status to be revoked because they're not providing a benefit to children. And
Exactly.
Sorry, and I should say he quoted Justice Strum, who you just mentioned, that court case, which showed that kids were being harmed as a result of these so-called affirmation treatments, affirming their gender confusion. Yeah,
I mean, we couldn't have dreamed a few years ago that this would have happened. A few years ago, I took some mums, a couple of mums whose children had been through this ringer, to meet with parliamentarians in Tasmania when we ran the forum there, and they said, "We've never had this help before." Speaking as because I was a lawyer and we were helping them, and we couldn't have dreamed that things would have got to this point in a few years. So we're riding the crest of a wave, but we have to keep at it because, as the papers said today, Mark Butler is frankly running for cover. He's put up this NH and MRC inquiry, but they're not willing to grasp the issue that this is arguably the biggest medical scandal of the 21st century. And it has to be stopped.
It has to be stopped. The Health Minister, Mark Butler, has his review that you just mentioned on the go slow. Christopher, we've all got some war stories about this. I remember taking this to the Assistant Education Minister, Scott Ryan, back in about 2016, showing him the material that was being put into schools through the Safe Schools program, the -18 material about chest binding and penis tucking for kids who wanted to appear as the opposite gender. They wouldn't believe us at the time. And of course, Christopher Pyne, the Liberal Party Education Minister, made sure he protected safe schools. And as a parent told the Victorian Premier Jacinta Allen last week, this puts kids on a pipeline to these dangerous gender clinics, from the classroom to the gender clinic. That's the pipeline. And it's not based on science. And hopefully your conference will help further debunk this once and for all.
We're very hopeful of that, and it'll be another step. I think this is a war of attrition. We've just got to keep at it, keep getting truth out there, keep arguing it rationally and clearly, and hopefully, as happened in the UK, as has happened in France, Sweden, Norway, Finland, the US now, that change will come. But we're just going to keep at it like a dog at a bone till we win.
Absolutely. The question is how many Australian kids will continue to be harmed until we fall into line with what the rest of the world is doing. Christopher Brohier, thank you so much for giving of your time on this Friday afternoon. Really appreciate it. Just remind people once again, where can they go to get tickets to that conference?
So it's www.cask.ltd. You go to the website and then there's a link to click to get you to the tickets.
Great. Thanks so much, Christopher.
Thanks, Lyle.
There's Christopher Brohier, who's helping convene that conference looking at gender medicine from a scientific and evidence-based perspective in Adelaide in October. Make sure you get along to that. Well, my next guest is someone who is also a friend and very involved in the Family First political party, and that's Deepa Matthew. Deepa is running as Family First lead upper house candidate for the South Australian election, which is in March of next year, not far away. I know her campaign is gathering momentum, and she joins me now to talk about her campaign and a couple of the big issues in South Australia. Deepa, welcome to the Macquarie Street Political Podcast.
Hello, good afternoon, Lyle.
It's great to have you, Deepa.
Thank you for having me today.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Tell our viewers why you're with Family First and why you're putting yourself for public office. You've actually got a red hot chance of winning a seat in the upper house next March.
Yes. So thank you, Lyle. Well, I think the two political parties have vacated a space. They are not fighting for families. I don't think they really believe in family values. And Family First, we fight for our families in this nation, and we have a space where we can make a difference, and that is why I am standing for the next state election.
Now, you've been involved right from the get-go of what we call the Family First Mark II. People will be aware the party was founded about 20 years ago, but about 4 years ago, yourself and some others in South Australia decided to get it going again. Why did you do that? And tell us a little bit about your political journey that brought you to Family First.
So, Lyle, in 2021, the then Liberal government brought out the legislation for abortion to end term. And in that period, I was in the Liberal Party, and many of us within the party ensured we lobbied, we asked our members of Parliament to not to support that bill. Unfortunately, it was a Liberal bill. And unfortunately, that bill went through Parliament. Abortion to end term was then legalized in South Australia. In 2021, a few of us, so that motivated me to quit the party. And in that conversation, in the same time, there were others in the Labor Party or ex-ministers from the Labor Party who had the same view around why did this even happen in our time? So Jack Snelling and Tom Kenyon got together and decided, why don't we bring back Family First? This has happened because Family First has vacated this space. So we then got together and reformed Family First. We ran in the 2022 state election and we came very close. Tom Kenyon came very close to winning a seat in the upper house. And that's how we were. And that's the reason, that's what motivated us to reform Family First.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I think as Andrew Bolt mentioned at the time when Tom and Jack, two former Labor members, said Family First is reforming because the Liberal Party is not conservative enough. And I think that's the thing that shocked. I was an outside observer. I couldn't believe that the Liberal Party was bringing in abortion to birth. I'd been a lobbyist for a long time, and it was always the Greens and the radical left of Labor that did all this crazy stuff. But now we've got the Liberal Party, and hence the need for Family First.
Yes, Lyle, and it's just such a shame, coming from the Liberal Party, and I know what the Liberal Party values stood for, the Menzies values, and it was so disappointing and heartbreaking to see that bill get through.
Yeah. Now, Deepa, you're a mother, you're a small businesswoman. Just to give us, our viewers and listeners, a little bit of a sense of your background, your professional background, and what sort of skills you'll bring to the Parliament, God willing, should you be elected.
So look, We migrated 20 years ago to Australia. First generation migrant. My daughter is almost 21. I know I do look quite young, but I do have a 21-year-old. And I've been in banking and finance since. So that has been my forte, is finance, and that is my skill set. Worked in corporate for many, many years, and then decided to start my own business. So I run a financial services company. I have a few staff working in the business. And look, I love that I'm able to give people a step up to start their career in a small business, and give them an opportunity in life too. So, and that's my background. And I love what I do.
Fantastic. Well, some financial literacy in a state parliament. All of our state governments around the nation are in crazy levels of debt, South Australia included. So hopefully you'll be able to bring some rigour there. There's been a couple of big issues in the news in South Australia, and we've been using those, quite rightly so, to make some commentary in support of your campaign to show what Family First stands for. But there was a South Australian Royal Commission or parliamentary inquiry into stillbirths, and this made the news. Natasha Stott-Despoja, who some people will remember as the very woke before woke was a term, she was a Democrat senator, she sort of headed this. Tell us about this inquiry and the sort of people that it's wanting to include in the discussion around stillbirths.
Yes, so Natasha Despoja, sorry, I just have to correct that. Natasha Despoja was around the domestic violence inquiry,
right?
Where one of the recommendation was that we need to ban smacking parents.
Sorry,
children.
I've got my inquiries mixed up. We'll
Yeah,
come to the smacking ban in just a
No,
moment. Sorry,
no,
that's
Lyle,
my fault.
I don't blame you. We've had a few things happen this week in South Australia, so we all can get muddled up. Monday morning.
Normally, South Australia is very quiet on the news front, but not this week.
No, not this week. On Monday, we had the Catholic schools, the girls in Catholic schools that were quite uncomfortable going into their toilets because a boy identifying as a girl were in their space. So, and the kids were told, if you are uncomfortable, please use the disabled toilets. And when the media approached the school said, well, that is the law, to allow kids who identify whichever gender in their different spaces. So we started with that, and then we had the smacking, and then we have the trans stillbirth remark. So I'm just going to go back to this the trans stillbirth remark. The select committee was established by various lobbying group by women who are experiencing miscarriage, stillbirth, to be able to see how SA Health can attune to their needs during this grieving process, which is extremely sad for a woman who carries a baby for 9 months or how many ever months, and then having to give birth to a stillborn child. It's an extremely tragic event for a woman. However, the head of Women's and Children's Hospital, and I'm just going to quote what she said. Ms. Graham said, this is what she said. Let me just bring that up to give you, in our discussions today, the terms of woman and women will be used. And this is in line with current research and evidence, she says. So fact. It is intended to include those with diverse sexualities, as well as intersex women and transgender women too. SA Health seeks to acknowledge inclusivity and individual family and community preference and identity in what we are describing. Now, I have to laugh, Lyle. I read that and I went, this is just ridiculous. And then for, to say that trans women have to be included in the discussion or bring them into a discussion on the basis of inclusivity into a stillbirth discussion is ridiculous.
Yep. Yeah, this is inviting someone who is a biological male who, for whatever reason, is struggling with their gender identity, has decided to identify as a woman, and then for them to demand to be part of a discussion about supporting women who have been through stillbirth. I mean, that's an insult to women who have been through that tragedy in life, isn't it?
Yes, it is an absolute insult to women who are going through such a extremely difficult and a grieving process, extremely. And so now what are you saying? I mean, she's the head of Women's and Children's Hospital. Now, are you going to change the name of the Women's and Children's Hospital to something else to, to consider inclusivity?
Yeah. So what's Peter Malinauskas, your Premier, saying? What's Vincent Tarzia, the Liberal opposition leader, saying? I mean, you'd think, with something as ridiculous as this, both leaders would be coming out saying, we know what a woman is in South Australia. We're just going to fix this woke aberration. But they don't, do they? They're silent. Well,
the Premier hasn't said anything, neither has the opposition leader, Vincent Tarzia. The Minister for Health did come out and defend Ms. Graham, saying that I don't think Ms. Graham was suggesting that men can give birth. That's not what we are suggesting either. What we are suggesting is, how does a man who has transitioned really understand what stillbirth is? Yeah. And then I think the opposition leader, opposition from the opposition team, has said that it's just bizarre. That's all.
Right.
That's the only
so
remark.
Someone from the Liberal opposition has criticised it, but they haven't said what they'll do. I just find it interesting, Deepa, that when these things happen, instead of Vincent Tarzia, who's the alternative Premier, it's Senator Alex Antic, who is terrific on all of our values, but he's just completely ignored in the Liberal Party. But the people who really matter, the alternative Premier, don't say anything.
Yeah, and that is why I think Family First has and that's why we have the voice here, and we have a space that we can fill. There's a gap that we can fill, and that is why Family First is here, because we are going to fight for women. Yeah. We are going to fight for these young girls, so that, and look, 10 years from now, we are going to look back, hopefully, and go, this was ridiculous, but imagine what our women and girls had to go through. Yeah, and I hope that happens 10 years from now. And it's interesting. I think that's exactly what J.K. Rowling, if you have seen her tweet, J.K. Rowling has put that up to say, this is absolute madness. And when it ends, we will actually look back and see how women were not allowed the dignity of owning their own sex-specific trauma.
Yep. No, this is huge. Very interesting that J.K. Rowling has weighed into events in South Australia. You're on the map down there.
I was like, yes.
Who would have thought? Look, I hope it doesn't take another 10 years. I think too many people are being hurt and damaged, particularly children who are being confused. Let's move on from the gender issue. Very important. The smacking ban. Now, that's where I got Natasha Stott-Despoja mixed up. So she was behind this domestic violence inquiry. There's the headline there from the Adelaide Advertiser this week. Is the government really going to ban parents from smacking their children?
Well, I hope not. I hope, I'm really hoping not. But we do have to make a stand, and we have to fight for these parents. This is a very long piece of string, right? To say that smacking and domestic violence are related. It's a very long space. Yep. As soon as we start legalizing such matters, you are really taking parents' rights away.
Yeah, that's right. And I read that article, and it's all about it's testimony from teenagers who may well have been legitimately abused by parents who did the wrong thing. But we've got laws around assault. It's not legal. No one's saying we want the ability of parents to assault a child or a teenager. But
Lyle, there's a difference.
You're a mother. I've had 4 children. You can't negotiate with a 2-year-old. Sometimes a loving but firm smack on the bottom is the best remedy and the best way to bring up well-adjusted children. It's not abuse, but to criminalise parents for doing what parents have done for millennia in an appropriate, loving, disciplinary manner, that really is the state infringing where it shouldn't.
Look, Lyle, abuse and discipline are very 2 different things. Yeah. Right, to say that abuse and discipline are the same, and research has proven that young children's brains are not really developed to retain information or instructions for a longer period of time. So if I were to tell a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, you can't run across the road because it's dangerous, you're going to die, or a 2-year-old, they have no comprehension of what death looks like for a 2-year-old, or hurting looks like, or you're going to be in hospital. Like, they have no comprehension of that. And then a 5 or 6-year-old may have a little bit of comprehension, but their memory, it is proven that their brains can't retain information for a longer period. So as soon as something new comes up, they forget that information and they're going to run across that road. So, so having a conversation with a child and speaking to the child in certain instances it does not work, right? So, but then to say that you are abusing your child it's very different. Discipline and abuse are two different things.
Yeah, no, this is the state becoming a busybody. And look, as you rightly say, no one wants children to be abused, but smacking a child in an appropriate, loving way in the right circumstances is sometimes the best thing you can do for a child. Deepa, it's so good that that you have the courage, and I know you put out a media release. People can read that on the Family First Party website, familyfirstparty.org.au, and read a bit more in depth. But it's, again, we haven't heard anything from the other major parties about this, and because it's controversial and people don't lack courage, this is how these rights of parents get taken away.
Yes, Lyle. And look, this is why Family First is so important, to be in this space. We are the only ones that are really standing and speaking about this, and are, it's only us in every state that actually bring up these issues and bring them forward. So that is why Family First is so important to be in this space. So for any of our viewers, go onto our website, look at our media releases, reach out to us if you have any issues and situations like this you would like to raise, and because we will fight for you and we will stand for you.
Fantastic. And if people want to get involved in your campaign, I know you're very much in March is not far away. The work's got to be done between now and Christmas to get ready for that campaign. They can go to the website, they can sign up as a volunteer, they can connect with your campaign, particularly if you live in South Australia. That'd be terrific. I know.
March 21st, 2026 it is, Lyle.
Yeah, it's coming around very quick. Well, we'll look forward to seeing more about your campaign. Deepa, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Lyle. Appreciate it.
You too.
Very good. Well, just a couple of things before we go. So there's been some breaking news this afternoon coming from the floor of the State Council of the Queensland Liberal National Party. Now, I don't normally want to get involved in the affairs of other political parties, but of course the LNP, the Liberals and the Nationals, they are a party of government. Family First is not. We're a minor party that seeks to influence and bring the Conservative side of politics back to where they should be. But this breaking news this afternoon is that on the floor of the LNP State Council, the delegates there voted on a motion to ditch net zero. Now, this is huge. Family First has been campaigning against net zero ever since the party was rebirthed 3 or 4 years ago, because we recognise this is hurting our economy, it's hurting families. The reason our electricity prices have doubled is because we've put intermittent, that's power that doesn't work all the time, power that's expensive, that destroys the environment, to bulldoze hilltops to put up windmills and solar farms over good agricultural land, and power lines all the way out to disperse power. It's just a joke, and it's causing the cost of everything to go up, and of course it's causing industry to go offshore. And people like Senator Matt Canavan within the LNP has been a voice in the wilderness. He's been ignored over the years, but he's had a big victory. About 20 branches of the LNP in Queensland put up motions. I understand that former Senator George Brandis was one of only about 5 people in a room of 700 to vote against ditching net zero. That tells you everything you need to know about the woke element of the LNP. The big test will be whether Susan Lee, the opposition leader, Susan Lee, I should say, whether she takes any notice of this. She gave a speech just before the motion was put, where she implored the party not to pass this motion, to stick with net zero. She said a modern Liberal Party has got to appeal to modern voters. I tell you what, there's nothing modern about your electricity going through the roof. If you live in Western Sydney or in the suburbs, if you're a rich person in one of these teal seats, you don't care about how much your electricity costs because you don't notice it. But you notice it in Parramatta, you notice it in the western suburbs of Brisbane or Adelaide, the northern suburbs of Adelaide or in Melbourne. And this is hurting families. It's causing our industry to be less competitive. It's doing immeasurable damage to the economy. There's nothing modern about it, Susan Lee. David Crisafulli, similarly the Premier in Queensland, he's wedded to net zero as well, although they have been ditching some hydrogen projects and that sort of stuff. So mixed messages. They're trying to walk both sides of the street, but this is a huge, huge development. Pretty much now every branch of the Liberals and Nationals around the nation have said no to net zero at their party conferences. It's really just the parliamentary leadership that's holding out. The other big news this week was the productivity roundtable in Canberra with the Treasurer Jim Chalmers, hand-picked industry people, lots of union representatives. Really, it was a talk fest. Unfortunately, there was some... I don't think there's going to be anything productive really come out of this. If we want to have a productive economy, you've got to cut government expenditure. Our debt is hitting $1 trillion this year. That is unsustainable. We've got more than a decade of debt and deficit ahead of us in the budget forward estimates. Well, that's the next 4 years, but over 10 years, there is no light at the end of the tunnel in terms of getting rid of our debt. That, of course, is inflationary, which causes the cost of all of our goods and services to go up. That hurts households enormously. And of course, high government spending is one of the key drivers of high interest rates. So there was no discussion about paring back government spending, which is out of control. There's some tweaks to the NDIS. Well, it needs more than some tweaks. And look, we all want to help people who have got disabilities, but we just can't afford to be so generous. And we're going to have to find ways for civil society to help. I was disappointed to see some of the other things that were being talked about, further taxes on wealth. Look, I'm all for an equitable tax system, but before we start talking about extra taxes, the government needs to get its house in order and reduce the spending rather than try to tax wealth. We should be encouraging people to make money and to do well. And of course, we need to get rid of net zero. That wasn't even part of the discussion. So how can you have a productivity roundtable when you're not even talking about the thing that's the biggest handbrake on productivity in this nation? And that is the net zero policy, which is transitioning our energy system away from what is cheap and reliable in terms of coal and gas to things which are intermittent and unreliable and expensive. So very little said about families at the round table. No discussion about income splitting, how you can help families where there might be one of the parents at home caring for children. I mean, the tax system penalises a mum or a dad who has one parent working in the home. That's got to stop. That's ideological, but of course that's not on the government's agenda. That's my 2 bobs worth on the economic roundtable. We've just got a couple of minutes left. I want to show you something that happened in the New South Wales Parliament this week, back on this, what's been a theme of today's podcast, and that was the age-old question, which is tripping up woke parliamentarians all the time. Take a look.
Position that a man who identifies as a woman, i.e. a trans woman, is eligible to enter and participate in the 2026 New South Wales Women of the Year Awards.
All women can be eligible to be nominated.
So you're saying trans women can be eligible to be nominated and awarded the New South Wales Women of the Year, the Premier's Women of the Year of Excellence, Community Hero?
All women are eligible to be nominated and be awarded those categories.
Well, is it not an absurd situation that a biological man who identifies as a woman could potentially be announced on the 5th of March 2026 awards event as the 2026 New South Wales Woman of the Year?
Well, as I said, it's the view of this government that all women should be able to be nominated and to be awarded if they meet the standards that are needed to achieve these awards, that they be rewarded for that.
Is that actually
Or
fair to a
recognised for it,
biological
but-
woman that's competing in those arrangements, in that?
Sorry?
Is that actually fair to a biological woman that is being assessed under those various criteria?
Well, there's a
What
robust...
really should be a very good, it looks like an excellent program.
Yep. Well, there is a very robust process for assessing the winners of each of those categories, I think in the past we've had some amazing women recognised through the Women of the Year
Yeah, but
awards, and I think we'll continue to.
So are you saying that in the future we're going to have some amazing men as women getting those awards?
Minister, there's, if I can just add that last year we received, or for this year's Women of the Year award, received well over 500 nominations. To reach the level of finalists, the amount of support you need from your community or your workplace or where you volunteer is extraordinary. So it's a really stringent process. So it would be, that person would be considered by their community and the people that nominated them as a woman. So it's a very, it's a really competitive process. So somebody has to be an outstanding member of their community to reach the level of finalist.
I don't know that actually answers the question, but anyway, what if they are an outstanding member of their community?
If they
As a
live
trans
and are
woman and-
accepted as a woman by that community, they'll be eligible for that award.
So you don't think it's absurd that they would get that award?
Personally, no.
You don't think it's absurd for a man to get a woman's award?
It's a woman getting a woman's award. So
No, it's a man's biological male getting a woman's award.
That's your...
But it gets down to your definition of what
Correct.
is a woman in the end of the day. Minister,
And that's the government's view.
and the government view, I know that, unfortunately.
Well, that was one of the most extraordinary pieces of parliamentary theatre I've ever seen. This woman on screen is the New South Wales Minister for Women. Jodie Harrison is her name, from the Minns Labor government. So she had a go at trying to rationalise all this. And then as that clip went on, and I should say full credit to Robert Borsak, who is the Shooters, Farmers and Fishers Upper House MP, asking the questions at that Budget Estimates Committee. This is being held at New South Wales Parliament House just this week. So he's interrogating her. He obviously knows what a woman is. He's asking the question because he knows what the answer is. Of course, we know in this woke world, the definition of woman has been changed to include biological males. But I thought what was really fascinating was the bureaucrat weighs in at the end. This is not someone who's elected. This is someone from the department who weighs in to help the floundering minister. And this is the person who actually says, a woman is, whatever that person says that they are, and that this is the view of the government. I think this is wrong on a number of fronts. It's an insult to women and girls, of course, that a biological man could be considered as the New South Wales Woman of the Year. And it's a scandal that a bureaucrat feels free to speak up on behalf of the government. And clearly they're the ones that are driving this. People look for, you hear Donald Trump and talk about the deep state. The Conservative politicians in the UK talk about the blob. That's the deep state and the blob in action there. They're the ones who really run the show, not the elected people like Jodie Harrison sitting there, although she probably believes all this, but she needed the backup of the bureaucrat to help her. So well done, Robert Borsak from the Shooters, Farmers and Fishers Party for raising that. He did a terrific job. We've got to shine more light on this. Unfortunately, I don't think you'll see this get much of a run in the media, but that's why we do podcasts like this. Finally, just to wrap up, Family First has got its national conference in 2 weeks' time. It's 2 weeks from today here in Sydney, in Epping, starting on the 5th of September with a dinner with Catherine Deeves, who was the solicitor on the Giggle v Tickle case. She was Sal Grover's solicitor. You can get tickets for the dinner on the Friday night of the 5th at familyfirstparty.org.au. And then on the Saturday, we've got this amazing lineup of speakers. For those who've been watching the publicity, you might notice we've done a bit of a swap there. Jude Blick from the Centre for Independent Studies is replacing Jared Holland. Jared contacted me a couple of weeks ago, and they've had a second child. He's been travelling a lot for work, and just asked if he could be relieved to do dad duties. And being family first, how could we say no? But Jude Blick is equally as qualified. The CIS have been doing tremendous work on this net zero issue, on the whole energy debate that we've been talking about a little bit on this podcast. So get along here, Jude. We've got Rachel Wong from Women's Forum Australia. She's on Sky News almost every other night in the trenches fighting for the rights of girls and women. Bella de Brera from the that other great conservative think tank, the Institute for Public Affairs in Melbourne. She's going to be talking about the education system, how it's indoctrinating our kids right from early childhood all the way through to university. Family First's own Roseanne Masters is passionate, like we all are, about the issue of human rights for unborn babies. She's going to be talking about abortion as healthcare, which of course is a misnomer. And Ian Plimer, Professor Ian Plimer. He's an eminent geologist. He studied thousands and hundreds of thousands of years of geological history and evidence. He would say millions of years, and he can say quite confidently the climate always changes. John Ruddock is a friend of mine. He's with a different political party, the Libertarians, and he's going to be speaking. We've invited him in the interests of minor party unity. John's been terrific on the gender ideology issues. He's been terrific on religious freedom, freedom of speech, and he's been terrific on the pro-life issue. So there's lots of areas of commonality. There's some areas we disagree on. He marched over the Harbour Bridge in support of, well, I'm going to say it was in support of Hamas. He wouldn't say that, of course. He was supporting what he thinks can be a functional Palestinian society. Maybe that can happen. We all want that to happen, but it can't happen until you get rid of Hamas. And sadly, that march rewarded Hamas. But nonetheless, I don't believe in cancel culture unless it's really, really extreme, and you could argue anyway. I won't get into all that, but John's a friend. I don't want to cancel him, but I do want to hear what he has to say about the many areas of commonality that we have. So come along. Registrations are closing soon. Get to familyfirstparty.org.au. Get your tickets. It's going to be held at the Epping Club at Epping here in Sydney. It's going to be a wonderful day. It's so important that we come together as a movement, and you'll meet lots of Family First people, former candidates. Our federal executive will be there, state executives. It's going to be a great gathering of people who are up for changing our nation for good. Well, I've gone way over time. It's been great to have your company this afternoon on the Macquarie Street Political Podcast. We'll be doing this on a reasonably regular basis, so stay tuned. But thanks again for your company, and goodbye, and keep speaking up.